Hello, Mark Cole here. Welcome to the John Maxwell Leadership Podcast. I'm sitting here today with John Maxwell, not just the writer, speaker, author, great communicator. I'm talking about the golfer. I'm talking about the 4-time repeat Pebble Beach Pro-Am golf player. Today, John just played in the Pebble Pro-Am, and that's what we're talking about. John, it's good to have you today. I'm so glad to be here. Kind of debriefing a great experience for you. Thanks for being on the call on the podcast today.
It was a great experience. Although I think that we need to let the listener know immediately that you can play in the Pro-Am and not be really good. So, remember, I'm the amateur. I'm not the pro. But I also think it's a great lesson as we're getting ready to talk about this, is the very fact that you don't have to be the best at doing something to enjoy it greatly.
Yeah.
And in this case, I'm not only not the best, I'm like probably wrapping up the bottom. I'm one of the lower ones, and yet I enjoyed my experience. It was great. You know, I've been there for 4 times, and what we had a blast.
You know what, John? I love a lot of things about you. I say it publicly. I say it to your face. I say it to your face, and it goes public like today. There's a couple of things that I love that I really watched this year about you. One is you don't take yourself serious. You're not on the golf course to prove your identity, to prove your manhood, to prove your value. And yet, you go and you have a good time and everybody around you grows and learns. But not only that, this is the second thing. You do not miss an opportunity to learn and grow from whatever experience. And we were just getting ready to speak to all of you today, and John's sitting here working with me, working with our team, and just saying, hey, what can we learn from this experience? Because you say it, experience is not the greatest teacher. Yep. Evaluated experience. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to jump into your experience at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and we're going to evaluate that experience, and all of the people listening today is going to learn and grow from that, John. So first, talk to me about this. It is your 4th time, and I've got to watch you in some or in parts of all 4 years. And talk to us about this privilege. You are going, the world watches this. This is a great opportunity. You've made the cut. You've not made the cut. You've had some good swings. I saw some of the swings this week. You've had some not so good swings.
Nice.
Talk about this. Talk about this privilege of playing in the Pebble Pro-Am.
Well, first of all, it's very beautiful. Pebble Beach is one of the most beautiful places in the world. So just to go there, to walk the courses, just to see the ocean, it's very relaxing to me, and it's very refreshing to me. So I love to go there. And I love golf. I love to play golf. I would like to be a better golfer, but that doesn't take away from my love of golf. I have a very limited time to practice golf, and so therefore, a long time ago, I had to settle for not reaching my potential as a golfer because it took too much time for me to reach my potential as a golfer. Mm-hmm. It's not what I make for a living. It's not where my gifts are. I would never be that great anyway. And so I think there's sometimes really that I've learned, and golf is one of them, to enjoy something really a lot doesn't mean that you have to be the best in it. And I find it, I really like to play golf. And every round I know I'll have some good shots, but I also know every round I'm going to have some bad shots. And that's just really, that's kind of part of it. But I also like one of the reasons I like going back to Pebbles, I really like to watch a good golfer.
Yeah.
I mean, to watch the pros hit that ball with such consistency and with such excellence in their skill, it's very inspiring to me. So, you don't even have to be really good at something and maybe never good at something, and yet still you can appreciate somebody that is good.
Yeah, but John, here's what I watch, and I agree with you. There's no but I watch you, and while you may not be good at golf, you're good at what you're good at. Because here's my point. How many people come up to you? I mean, we're talking entertainers, we're talking business people, We're talking pro athletes, we're talking all these people come up to you and tell you, you profoundly impacted me. They're not talking about your golf game. I know you know that. They're talking about your books. They're talking about who you are. So even though you're there as a golfer, you never lose that. You never lose that you are you're a person that adds value to others. In fact, Blake McCoskey was there. founder of Tom's Shoes. Many of you listening to our podcast, you know him. He could not believe he got to play right in front of John Maxwell, and on a couple of occasions you interacted. We'll probably end up doing something together. But it was people like that all the time, because while you were not there as a good golfer, you were there as a good adding value to people person, and people recognize you for your gifts.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I love that, people coming up and thanking me for maybe what I wrote or somewhere where they heard me speak. And so you got a lot of people out there that you've added value to. And again, I know who I am. And I'm a person who loves to play golf, but that's not where I change lives. I change lives by adding value to people through speaking and through writing.
Yeah.
And nobody came up to me and complimented me on my golf game, but they did maybe compliment me on what I've said to them, or a quote or a book or something like that.
They did.
That's for sure.
Hey, talk to me. So you're there to play. You're an invited guest. They want you there.
Yes.
They're very glad you're there.
Yes.
But here's what I watched you do. You know how to play, yet stay out of the way. Talk to me about that whole dichotomy. I'm here to play, but I'm going to stay out of the way of these pros.
Well, the first thing that helps you is to ask yourself the question, am I the pro or am I the amateur? and I've never got that confused, Mark. I'm the amateur. And what I mean by that is very simple. My brother and I were having a conversation on this one day, and he said, John, does it make you nervous to be out there at the Pro-Am and all those people are around you and they're watching you with your swings and your putting? And he said, doesn't that make you nervous? I said, not at all, Larry. I said, let me explain something to you. There's not one person that came to Pebble Beach this last weekend to watch me play golf. Not one. There's nobody got up and said, my gosh, I can hardly wait to see how John swings. I can hardly wait to see how he's going to post his score. They came to see the pros. Mm-hmm. I'm the amateur. So when a crowd is gathered around, they're gathered around to see Phil Mickelson. They're not gathered around to see me. In fact, they're looking at me and they're saying, I wish the fat boy would just putt and get out of the way. You know what I'm saying? So that I can really watch who I came to watch. And I can flip that. When people come to hear me speak, they're coming to hear me speak. And they're not really wanting too many other people to jump up on the stage and speak very much. If they do, they kind of look at their watch and say, would they get off the stage so John can talk? So I know what it's like to be the center of attention in my gift area, but I also know that in this case, I'm not the center of attention. In fact, Mark, I'll tell you what I do. I put myself in the shoes of the pro. So here comes some amateur, some old amateur. Here he comes. And he probably doesn't play very well. And now I'm going to have to spend 3 days, maybe 4 days with him. And I'm going to have to play my game around who this is. And so the first thing I say to the pros every year is I introduce myself and I say, I'm an amateur and I'm going to stay out of your way. So here's what that means. If you want at any time, even if I'm farther in the putt than you are, if you really are focused on you, if you want to putt before me, all you got to do is say, John, I want to go putt before you. And I just want you to know you're the boss. I'll just listen to you however you want to play your game. I don't want to get in your way. I don't want to mess up your rhythm. And I tell them that at the very beginning because I want to set them free from having to worry about having an amateur in their group and having to somehow play and work around somebody that isn't doing this for a living. And so I tell them right on the front end, and it really works. And just it's very simple. I went to the AT Pro-Am, and it was not about me. It was not about me, Mark. It was all about the pros. I just happened to be along for the ride, enjoying myself immensely. And so I do. I stay out of their way. And when I played the first year, I remember, because I hadn't played with really good players or pros, on the putting green, for example, I wanted to make sure I knew where to stand. So I told my caddy, I said, no, you just help me. Make sure I'm standing in the right place where I'm not in their view when they putt. I don't want to, visually impair them or distract them anyway. And he gave me great advice. He said, you always stand where the caddies stand. The caddies know where to stand. And you'll be out of the way. Okay, so I'm a caddy. I'm an amateur. I go over there where they are because I don't want to be in their way. I want them to play their best because that's what they do for a living.
John, not even at Pebble Pro-Am, but we were just had lunch in the restaurant with Michael Strahan. 2 weeks ago we were with Tony Dungy. and you have this awareness of being respectful of other people. Do you think that you're a person in demand as well? Do you think you naturally thought that before you knew what it was like to be pressed on? Or do you think that's something that the rest of us can really figure out? How do we help and help others that are in the game and stay out of the way?
I think when you enter a room, any room, ask yourself immediately, why am I here and what is my position? And so when we were doing the coaches thing the other day and speaking to about 3,000 coaches, Tony Dungy was there. And I was there as a speaker. Tony was there as a speaker. But when you think of a coach, who do they really respect and value the most? They value and respect Tony Dungy more than they do me. He's a model for them. He's a coach. He's been in the trenches with them. He relates and connects with them closer than I do. And so what I know and understand very quickly is that it's not about me. It's still,
Wow.
add value to Tony.
Yeah.
And so whenever I'm with anyone, and by the way, let me just say again, I know what it's like to be the star. I know what it's like when I'm number one in the room. And people came to hear me or came to pay to hear me or be around me or get a picture with me. I know what it's like to be that way. And I'm always, I can honestly say I don't think I'm ever disgusted, but I'm always amused at people who are around me that don't understand that either, and somehow want to occupy all my time when there's 7 other people that want to, have a little piece of me, and they're over there as if they're the only ones. And I think maturity, Mark, is the ability to see another person's perspective and point of view.
Yeah.
And you show me an immature person, they just basically see their point of view. And so, the pro-am's not about me, and it's all about the pros. When we go to the coaches, it's all about, Tony, and, just let Tony have the front stage, and I'll kind of stand behind him and pat him on the back and tell him he's doing a great job.
Thanks for all of you that's joining and listening to us on the podcast today, the John Maxwell Leadership Podcast. You can subscribe to that. Go to johnmaxwellleadershippodcast.com and you can subscribe. John, you played with a qualifying pro, a pro that's on the tour, and you watched 3 days of play. You watched and observed some really cool things that perhaps you could share with us a little bit today, some applications, some leadership, some observations.
Well, okay, I will. One lesson I learned was wherever you are, be your best self and be true to yourself. And so I'm at a golf tournament, but my best self and being true to myself is there something I can do to help the golfers? Now, certainly isn't giving them any instruction in their golf game. Hey, I've never had, in my 4 tournaments, I've never had a golfer look at me and say, "Now, John, could you help me? What do you think's wrong with my swing? They're not there." But they also, all the golfers know I write. All the golfers know I have a leadership. And in fact, when we were walking down the fairway, they're asking me questions about leadership, and many of them have read my books. And so I don't, basically, here's how it works. I let them ask the question because they may be focused on the game. They don't want to talk about leadership. But if they come up and say, "Well, let me ask you about what you wrote in this book," or something, then I come alongside of them. But what I really try to do is I try to be the best self that I possibly can. And I try to just connect with those golfers in their world, but teaching them leadership and just add value to them. How can I add value to them? As you know, when we finished our tournament in Pebble Beach, I had my book Leadership with me, and I gave it not only to the players, but I gave it to the caddies. And and a couple of them gave me their connecting addresses and ways to get to them, and said, let's continue this on. And so one of the things I just go out there to do is just to be who I am, which means I'll hit some good shots, I'll hit some bad shots, but that's not why I'm there. I'm really there to add value to the golfers and hopefully maybe say something, be something that'll help them to be better in their career. I remember, as you'll know, Richard Lee, I was with him the year we made the cut, and he was just a kid, a rookie. And we've kept a mentoring relationship up because of that. And we talk about a lot of stuff, not golf, family and life and perspective and attitude. And I find it a real joy because I think, why does he keep coming back to me? Because I added value to him. So that's, when I think of Pebble, that's the first thing. But the lesson I'd like to drive today, if I can, just for maybe for 5 or 8 minutes, is is that life is tough. And in this case, I could say golf is tough. Anybody that's ever played golf knows this is not an easy game. You never master this game. You never hardly ever see a pro win 2 weeks in a row. It's just too hard of a game to keep so honed, so fine-tuned. Remember our time when I was with Tom Watson at our Pro-Am in Atlanta with the senior tour, and I was interviewing Tom, remember, and he said, Tom has won 50 tournaments, a lot of tournaments.
Right.
And he said there were only five tournaments that he ever won that he didn't have to make any adjustments on. Huh. I mean, that he played 4 rounds and it was just, he was in rhythm and just, where's the trophy? Where's the trophy? All the others, somewhere in there, he had to correct something, fix something, and he gave you the expression, I have to adjust myself to win. Well, golf is tougher, and here's what I'm saying. Golf is tough. Don't make it tougher. Don't make it tougher. And when you think of what we did at Pebble Beach there, I mean, the weather. The weather, it was the worst weather in my 4 times being there, and the pros were talking about it was the worst weather for ever. And
well, I know you're going to get to this, but I heard several pros when they had the weather delay. They've never played in hell before.
Yeah,
it was hell.
Yeah. In fact, on the final round, the one that really counts, I mean, they had to stop, and hail was on the greens, and they couldn't even play, and I think they had to stop for 2 hours. So you got cold weather, windy weather, rainy weather, hail, and then we just saw a classic example of how emotional stability can really make a difference in golfer's life, because you remember Phil Mickelson, Paul Casey. Yep. This was the day, the last day. They're number 1 and 2. One of those two are going to win the tournament, but because of the hail and the 2-hour delay, they're fighting against darkness. Can we finish? Can we finish? And you remember we were watching that and debating. Do you think they can finish? And you and I both said no, they can't finish. And we both of us kind of said we thought that it would be about the 17th hole where they'd have to quit. So now here comes the rules and the person to get over at Pebble Beach and he starts talking. And what I thought it was interesting is he didn't tell him that the game was going to be stopped. He asked them if they wanted to play anymore. And Paul Casey wanted to stop, and Phil Mickelson didn't want to stop. Now, Phil was on a roll. I think he had maybe 4 birdies out of the last 7 holes. And so, I mean, it's kind of like, no, don't stop. I'm on a roll. I'm only 2 holes away, and he was up 3 strokes. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, victory was very, very close, and he's won that, I think, 4 other times. So, I mean, he knows what it's like to win at Pebble. So he wanted to keep on going. Paul Casey wanted to stop. And you can see now there's a conflict of emotion going on, and Paul is going to be able to say whether we go or stop. And so Paul says, no, I want to stop. And you can immediately, all of you that watch this match, you can see on Phil Mickelson's face, he was one unhappy camper. He wasn't happy at all. He wasn't happy with Paul. He was unhappy with the darkness, because he said, no, we can do this. We can get through here. Let's not stop. Let's finish this off. And I saw Phil, this incredible golfer with 40-some victories, I saw him emotionally start to come down. I mean, it was starting to pull, and it was very visible. And to be honest with you, I was a little disappointed in Phil. Mm-hmm. I thought, come on, Phil, you're a major golf champion. People love you. I love you. He's one of my favorite golfers. Come on, let's get a little bit more emotionally mature here, because Paul Casey hasn't won as much as Phil, has never won at Pebble Beach, and he had an amateur partner that if they could finish out, they had a chance of winning as a team, and he had a very small chance of winning, but maybe he could, and so, but Paul won, and so now we see Phil emotionally, he's kind of on the cliff, okay, and what I would like to do is. What I saw was really beautiful. In 5 minutes, I saw Phil go from emotionally being very disappointed and visibly showing his disappointment and probably having some immaturity in him, to by the time he was interviewed 5 minutes later, he saw the perspective of Paul, and his whole mannerism changed. And I thought, that's the Phil Mickelson that I really know. And I would like to just I think for our listeners, I would like to just talk for a few moments about how to talk yourself off of the cliff. Because we've all been there.
Yeah.
I've been there. Mark, you've been there. I've got my team here with me today. We've all been out on the cliff. I've been on the emotional cliff where I'm ready to jump off, okay, and do something really, really, really stupid. So what's the difference? Why is it one person, they're up there, they're stranded, and they're going to jump, and it's not going to be good, and the other person can say, okay, come on, there's going to be another day, and walk down. And I want to share four things. Number one is, if you really want to talk yourself off the emotional cliff, number one, you've got to get control of your emotion. When we're out of control emotionally, it's because our emotions are in control. And this was exactly what, and by the way, when our emotions are in control, when we're emotionally on a cliff, I can guarantee you, Mark, I can guarantee you, listeners, it's always because we're self-centered. Mm-hmm. We're thinking about us and our situation. So, in fairness, so is Paul Casey. When Paul Casey said, I want to quit, I don't want to play 2 more holes of golf because of the darkness, he was thinking about himself. I want the best chance of maybe coming back and winning. I want the best conditions to be there. Paul's thinking about himself. And Phil's over there saying, my gosh, I'm on a roll. What do you mean stop? I can play in the darkness. It doesn't matter. If I can just finish these 2 holes, I got the trophy. I can go home. They were both thinking about themselves. But in 5 minutes, when Phil did the interview, one of his first things was, he said, I understand why why he would want to stop. Now, what happened? The second thing happened that you've got to do when you want to talk yourself off of the cliff. And that is, the first, now remember, is you got to get control of your emotions. And by the way, you'll never get control of your emotions as long as you're still thinking about yourself. This is huge. So somebody said, well, how do I get control of my emotions? You have to get away from thinking about how's this affecting me and then go to how's this affecting the other, which is point number 2. You got to think of the other person. The moment that, Mark, I began to think of other people and what's best for them, not what's best for me. What do they need, not what do I need? What do they want? Now that begins to settle me. Now we're into maturity again. I'm seeing things from someone else's perspective, and that is just absolutely huge in getting off of the emotional cliff. There's a third thing, though, that I think, and this one's a miss. I see it all the time. If I want to get off the emotional cliff, the third thing I need to do an act for that other person of kindness. It's more than me just thinking of the other person. It's me now doing something action-wise that begins to prove that I see their side or I see where they are. And for example, Phil, in his situation, he looked at the interview and he says, I understand why Paul would say that. But Paul has a reason for that. Paul's right. From his perspective, it's now what he's doing. He's not only thinking Paul has the right to his opinion, and he probably, but now he's acknowledging this. There's an act here. And then the fourth thing is that if you've got to get off the emotional cliff, you've got to leave something negative and you've got to go to something positive. I doubt if there's a day that I'm not on the emotional cliff over something. The question is not do you get there, the question is how do you come down? And again, 4 things. Get control of your emotion. And remember, that emotion, you're self-centered. Number 2, think of the other person. Number 3, do an act for the other person. And number 4, leave something negative and go to something positive. Make it tangible in your life. And I think that's a pretty good
It is, John.
Pebble Beach lesson.
It is. And what I love, this is one of the things I love about my role with the podcast, is I get to flesh out how we do that in the John Maxwell Enterprise.
Yes.
I get to show application, and many weeks, week in and week out, we take your teachings like you've given today, and we give application. And I look at these 4 things. I look at the 4 things that we went through as far as your experience. And then I look at these 4 pieces of content that you've given all of us as leaders. And that first one, get control of your emotion. You know, John, I have been your CEO for 9 years now. And I can remember many times you frustrated. I can never remember a time to where you issued an edict or a direction out of emotion. That's 9 years. Now, I've worked with you, around you for 19 years. but the last 9 I have had close proximity. And you just don't lead from that emotion. You gather yourself. I've seen you have a couple of Phil Mickelson moments right there before when the horn sounded and he rolled his eyes and threw his hands up. I've seen those moments with you, but you never lead from that moment. And as leaders, I'm a kid sometimes, I feel, in trying to lead, remembering that you've got to get control of your emotion before you issue an edict or before you lead is something that I've just watched you do over and over again. Think of the other person. I'm not even going to go there, John. You add value to people. The whole time you're trying to help the other amateur. You're trying to help the caddies. You're signing books for all of them. The caddies have read as much of your stuff as anybody. And you're constantly thinking of ways to value the other person. This act of kindness point that you made, we just did. You just recently you released your leadership book, and we're doing a digital product with that. And I was talking about how you have a daily mandate that you want to do something for somebody that they can't do for themselves. It's a daily checklist of yours. And I've watched you. I've watched you walk down the streets of New York, walk down the streets of Cincinnati, and find somebody doing something and do something for them that they can't do for themselves. And many times they don't even know what you just did for them until later on. That is a discipline that I think you're encouraging us as leaders. Don't make this a one and done. The reason Phil Mickelson is playing on Sunday and actually Monday, it was a 5-day tournament, is because somewhere way back in some pro-am when he was just getting his card, he figured out how to take emotion out of decision making. Yes, he did. And I've watched you do that. And the final thing that you said, leave something negative and go to something positive. Over and over again, I've watched your world, your discipline of us as leaders to go to something, don't leave something. And most of the time when we feel like leaving, it's because it's a place of negative. It's not working out. We don't like it. It's not good. And we leave prematurely, and we lose the opportunity to gain the emotional fortitude to lead at a bigger level. And again, beautiful points, great experience at Pebble. Thanks for letting me be there. But you are living these points out. And that's my role in this podcast, is to go, hey, this is not just something nice to say. This is something that you live out.
I think in closing this podcast out, Mark, if people said, John, did you have a great week at Pebble Beach? I'd say, yeah, I did. Now, they didn't ask me if I shot a good score. I shot a terrible score. I was lousy. I just kind of basically stunk the place up. But I had a great week at Pebble Beach because I didn't go. Oh, yes. Did I play golf? Yes. Did I want to have good shots? Of course I did. Would I have liked to make the cut? Yes, I would have. I've made that cut before. I know how fun it is to play on Sunday and get that umbrella that the PGA gives you that says, I made the cut, and realize you can't buy it, but I have one because I made it. So yes, I wanted all those things. I was disappointed in my game. I didn't play well, but I had a great week at Pebble Beach. I got to add value to my caddies. I got to help my caddy do something special with his family that he probably wouldn't have done if I wouldn't have come alongside of him. So I had a great week at Pebble. Oh, by the way, there was a golf game there, I think. But that had nothing to do with my great week.
Yeah, and on a personal level, thanks for not making the cut on Sunday, because we got to listen to the hail on the roof of our hotel room and not use that umbrella I made the cut to protect us from the hail. So thank you.
Some of those umbrellas probably had holes in them after that. No, I'll have to say, when I saw that weather, I thought, this is one cut I think I'm glad I didn't make.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Hey, to all of you, John, to you for sure, but thank you for joining us on the Maxwell Leadership Podcast. I know you're listening in, but subscribe, pass it along to someone else. We will see you next week. Another lesson from John, some more application from the rest of us. Have a great week, everyone. And again, thanks for joining us.